UFO whistleblower David Grusch has come forward stating that he believes the United States government is planning to leak his medical records regarding his struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder, allegedly to discredit him. In a statement, Grusch has said the mental health struggles of the U.S. military and intelligence community is a broad issue that is very close to my heart, and I believe it should be discussed in an open environment due to the stigmas associated with the subject. It has come to my attention that The Intercept intends to publish an article about 2 incidents in 2014 and 2018 that highlight previous struggles I had with post-traumatic stress disorder, grief, and depression.
Part of the statement continued, like many veterans, I struggled after returning home from Afghanistan. Furthermore, I was personally affected again years later when a close friend of mine, who was serving in Air Force Special Operations Command at the time, took his own life shortly after we last spoke. Investigative journalist Ross Coulthart, who interviewed Grusch when he originally came forward with the allegations that the United States government has possessed non-human craft, discussed what he knows about the matter involving the medical records on Chris Cuomo's show last night. Let's watch.
Earlier today, David Grusch received an approach from a news magazine, an online news magazine called The Intercept. They're doing their jobs. That's fine. They've been fed information. The problem is the information that they've been fed is information that David had already privately disclosed to us and actually volunteered in his interview with me. It was a section of the interview that didn't go to air. But basically, he discussed with us when I asked him whether there was any dirt that anybody could drag out to try to discredit him. He barely thought this was worth mentioning, but he acknowledged that he'd suffered from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, when he returned from Afghanistan. David served his country honourably and with distinction. He's a decorated officer. And unfortunately, when he came back from Afghanistan, like a lot of men in your country and in mine, he struggled with the demons of what he'd seen in combat. And at one time, he wouldn't mind me telling you this, he was suicidal. And his lovely wife was so concerned about him that at one stage she did call the police because there were guns in the house. She wanted to make sure he was protected. And in the end, David was taken to a local hospital, given the treatment that he needed. And indeed, this is the most important thing, Chris, the intelligence community and the Defence Department clearly accepted that there was no issue because he was allowed to keep his security clearance and he continued to serve his country honourably.
We reached out to The Intercept for comment, but have not heard back yet.
Is this material information?
Was that?
Yeah. Do you think, we'll talk about the ethics of,
sure,
of the government allegedly choosing to disclose this private health information, but is it even material, whether or not he experienced a moment of suicidal ideation or was hospitalized for a period of time or suffers from depression or PTSD, things like that?
Right. I think it doesn't seem super relevant to me. The longer I think about it, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, I mean, if it was schizophrenia or mental illness of that nature, hearing things that aren't there, then I think we would say, yes, it is relevant.
Well, there are post-traumatic stress disorder can present in people thinking they're still
sure,
in wartime setting, confusing noises for bombs and other
sure,
kind of, things like that. That we don't know that that's the case. Presumably, if The Intercept does release this article later this week, then we'll find out more about specifically what happened. Of course, the version that we just heard is them trying to get out ahead of the story and presenting it in a,
right,
palatable manner. But it is possible, if it does come out that he has at other points in his life suffered from any kind of hallucination or distortion of reality, would that change for you whether or not this was material information?
Yeah, I have to say, and I don't like saying this because it does feel like an effort to smear or discredit him, including and especially by whatever, if it is the case that military sources or government sources leaked this, that is just shocking and unconscionable, disgusting behavior. I think it sucks. I really do.
Yeah.
That said, it's not. I think this is a hard case. It's clearly not totally irrelevant or totally unrelated, but also people should, we still can take people seriously even if they've had a mental health episode or a depressive episode in their past. That doesn't discredit them at all. That is, many Americans have had that, especially who've gone through combat, who've gone through such a trying and traumatizing thing. So I don't at all want to get to the place or leave people with the impression that voids the things that he's saying, or that makes, or that people who go through that in general are not trustworthy. I don't think that's the case at all. It sounds like it would have been beneficial, frankly, given that, according to Colehart, Grusch told him about some of that, and then that wasn't in the interview. It might have been beneficial, honestly, to have him, and it sounds like he was willing to do that. It sounds like he was willing to straightforwardly address that and note that. And I think that might have been a good way to go instead of having it come out like this.
Yeah,
but obviously, no one is obligated to disclose, their medical past.
Yeah, I wonder if they did record that section of their conversation, and if releasing it now would also help. I mean, this also, I think, raises some interesting questions about the status of leakers in the government. Mm-hmm. At other moments of leaking scandals, whether it was the young man on, was it Reddit or Discord, who earlier this year had leaked.
Teixeira.
Yes, exactly. Whether or not it's someone like Julian Assange or Chelsea Manning, et cetera, there is this posture when the information reflects poorly on our government's behavior, that they need the book thrown at them, that they need to be thrown in jail, that it is the worst violation possible. And our media tends to go along with that. When the leak is the normal kind of leak that frequently happens, where the government is feeding stories to the media, the way that some people thought that some of the Nord Stream coverage was the government's story that was being offered up to places like the New York Times, who were printing them without much pushback or consideration, then that, of course, is permissible and allowed. And so now, in this case, if it is in fact true that the government is leaking information to discredit the public interest in UFOs and the testimony that's coming out, where people are corroborating having personally seen and experienced UFOs, aliens, seeing spacecraft, et cetera, then this is another reason that we should not especially credit the country's hand-wringing when it comes to the importance of leaks and stopping leaks and preserving confidentiality.
Yes. Well, Colehart also weighed in on the journalistic process he understands to be behind the release of the medical information about Grusch.
There was, in the documents that were prepared at the time, there was a thing called a temporary detention order, which transferred him to a medical psychiatric unit, an inpatient program, where he got the treatment that he needed. And this is a document that would be, if the media had done the right thing, it would be in his police department file in the county sheriff's office. But Dave has checked today because he assumed that the journalist had done his homework and just asked the local sheriff for the files. The sheriff has confirmed it did not come from him. The only other place that had this information is the intelligence community. Dave's personal files inside the intelligence community, where quite properly, when anybody is security assessed, things like this have to be looked at. And somebody
so that's the
inside the intelligence community leaked it.
That's the crumb trail. The Intercept is an interesting outlet for them to go to after all their protection of Snowden. It's interesting that they would want to have anything to do with anything seen as negative. Now, I have two problems with this story. One is that if you're trying to fight transparency by smearing the guy who lit the fire for it, one, it's too late because the horse is out of the barn and we want to know no matter what happens to Grusch, with all due respect. But the second one is that somebody thought that playing with his mental health would be a way to discredit him, which is playing into one of the ugliest stigmas in our society.
What do you make of the point about the Intercept? I'm not sure I quite followed what Cuomo was going after there.
I think he was saying that the Intercept is a publication that is all about or that is in favor of government transparency. I mean, obviously, we've featured a lot of people on this show from The Intercept. Ryan Grimm used to co-host the show with me for a period of time. He's affiliated with The Intercept.
I worked there.
You worked there, right? You worked there. I think it's a I think he was saying he considers it to be an open-minded place, so maybe a place where that wouldn't want to tamp down on speculation about government transparency.
Sure, but it's also a place that publishes leakers. I mean, that's what it's most known for, is for publishing classified information.
Leakers who are bringing information about what the government is keeping secret from you. In this case, this is a leaker, again, Cuomo is not wrong, to smear and discredit a person seeking disclosure of government secrets.
Well, they haven't published anything yet, so we'll see how they characterize
I don't know.
But it also does seem like, as we discussed, depending on the nature of the disclosure, potentially relevant to what's going on here. Now, I do think that it's the argument that because he was able to keep his classified status might suggest that there's no there.
Yeah.
I would like to know a little bit more about the circumstances under which the military strips people of classified status, whether or not having mental episodes.
Did you see Oppenheimer yet? This is a major plot point in the movie.
I have not seen Oppenheimer yet.
It's that actually does come up. And in that context, it was unfairly being stripped of him due to unfair associations with the Communist Party from much earlier in his career. So I think The Intercept, like, you would more expect The Intercept to, maybe if this story had appeared in a different outlet, to go after it with the angle of the military-industrial complex is trying to smear David Grusch and leak this information.
Sure, and maybe, who knows how they'll characterize it. Yeah. Maybe, in fact, they will say, we released this information likely with the intent to smear him, but here's some additional context.
I don't know. This one is a little tough. I don't think we have a right or something to know about every single person's history with medical stuff and mental health stuff, and we should never be putting those people down or rendering them untrustworthy. However, because these are very consequential claims that he's being made about crafts and recovered pilots of non-human, non-Earth crafts. Those are incredible claims that we obviously want to hear more about. And I guess I understand why some people would think that information is relevant, even though I really don't like the tactic of smearing someone in this way. Also the intelligence people operating to just protect this secret.
The timing of this is also interesting. My understanding is that Grusch made these claims a long time ago. He's talking about this for quite some time. Did this alleged incident happen prior to him having viewed the egg-shaped craft during his flight in the sky? If he gave contemporaneous reports describing what he had seen, how relevant is it that later he might have suffered some mental health issues that may or may not have involved any negative impact to his ability to perceive things accurately? We don't know any of that. So I'm shouldn't say looking forward to, but I think it will be helpful to all involved to get more clarification following the story's actual publication. And we'll definitely tell you what we discover when that happens. More Rising after this.